Thanks for viewing my presentation on the FIT model for online pedagogy, focused on delivering high-quality online learning for maximizing student engagement. My name is Karen Orlemans, and the model I am presenting here draws on most recently my experience as an online master's student, but also my work practices in the field of education and education technology, as well as my research into e-learning, which I have been engaged in since my first foray into this space in the mid-1990s. I also draw on the research of others in the field and have included a short number of references at the end of my presentation. Online learning is changing the face of education. Students are no longer just engaging with text, pens and papers, or, for that matter, with a computer. Now, we can expect to see them studying and learning anywhere, at any time. And as educators, we need to capture those moments, but more than that, we need to make them count. So, what is it that students want to see when they engage in online learning? What they tell us is that they want to be able to find things consistently. Students find it most distressing as they go from unit to unit that they cannot find the material they need to be able to complete their work. They also prioritise their assignments. Certainly in reviewing student use on middle units, we find that the most frequented places is their assessment tasks, but they also want to be able to find and easily download their unit outlines. In fact, the research tells us that besides the lecturer, and yes, their expertise and the support they offer the student is still the first and foremost indicator of student satisfaction. The other areas that consistently are high in students' responses across a range of research studies is how the unit and the course is structured. They want advanced organisers, unit and course schedules, to be able to see clearly from the outset how the material being presented links to the learning content, links to the assessment tasks, and leads to the learning outcomes. They want to be stimulated and motivated to learn. They want to be challenged, and they like to have some choice. They also like to be able to learn at their own pace, their time and their way. And finally, they like to collaborate, work with their peers, work with the lecturers. The social environment is important, and this is true for whether it is face-to-face or online. The model I'm presenting to you here brings these together. FIT stands for Foundational, Interactive and Transformational Modes of Pedagogy in the Online Space. It is not intended to be a hierarchical model. Instead, a course, consisting of many units, should draw on the full range of pedagogical experiences for the student. And the decision for pedagogy must be based on the learning outcomes. All decisions about a unit delivery should always use the student's learning as the starting place. The learning outcomes determine decisions you as a lecturer will make in regards to the 4 core elements of an online unit, which form the basis of the unit framework. The first of these elements is the content. And yes, content very much drives the learning still in most of our institutions. Though the content here refers not just to the learning materials, that is the lectures, the readings, the hyperlinks and so on, but also the administrative content, the unit outline, a learning schedule. The way learning content is delivered will depend on the learning outcomes for the unit, and thus direct which pedagogical form your unit will ultimately take. The second core element common to all units are the instructional strategies, the methods for delivering the content, and how the students will engage with it. How will you encourage students to learn the material? Now this may be completely self-directed, though nonetheless may include quizzes, crosswords, forums and so on. Or it may be more interactive and collaborative, drawing on peer and group-based activities. One of the best resources I have found to help with developing and implementing online activities has been the book Engaging the Online Learner from Conrad and Donaldson. This fabulous collection of individual, dyad and group activities collected from many sources is great for adding a new level of engagement in your online space. Many of these activities I have implemented with great success in my own online courses. The third core element for a unit is communications. The tools to be used to allow, encourage and create the interactive spaces between the student and the lecturer, but also between students, both for learning and for socializing. And these could be as basic as the use of email, the Moodle announcement tool, the use of chat or forums, the listing of the lecturer's phone number, or they can be more elaborate, such as those you see listed here. We remember from the beginning of my presentation that the inclusion of a collaborative space, the opportunity to engage with others, is one of the most important indicators for student course satisfaction. Finally, and very importantly, if you are a student, the fourth core element is the assessment space. How will your learning outcomes be assessed? What are the summative tasks that will assess the student learning? What are the formative tasks that will help you as a student measure their progress against the learning outcomes? In this, importantly, is the use of a Dropbox for submitting assignments, but also clear information on how to complete those assignments, how the assessment tasks are linked to the learning and the unit's learning outcomes, as has already been stated, but cannot be stressed enough. And you see here a number of suggestions, though these are but a tip of the iceberg of options. Please feel free to discuss this with me if you want to consider something perhaps a little bit different. Let's talk about your unit's learning outcomes. And of course, how you intend to give feedback and how you seek feedback from your students. Feedback should never be a one-way street. As lecturers, we need to seek feedback from our students about their learning experiences and then act on that information to improve the learning experience for the next cohort. These form an important part of your unit design and hence form a core element. So, what does a foundational unit look like? I have defined the foundational mode of online as having the minimum amount of each of the core elements present to allow a self-directed student to successfully complete a unit meeting all the learning outcomes. It is a static delivery of the learning content, though there should be active engagement by the student with the learning activities. This mode of online pedagogical delivery would support any form of unit teaching, whether online, face-to-face, or flexible. That is, could be intensive, short course, or blended modes. It basically delivers a didactic but well-structured, well-resourced unit to the student for them to engage in. And to support the development of the foundational mode, I have developed a number of resources which I have provided here, allowing lecturers to check their progress. Here you see, for example, the checklist linked to possible Moodle examples. And here, images of possible structures using the topic view from Moodle. Or better yet, when we consider the growing use of tablet and mobile computing, the same course but utilising the grid view, though these are just two of many possibilities. Let's look at an interactive unit. What would one of those look like? We see here that the focus is on building a more interactive unit so that the students have greater opportunities to interact with the content, the instructional activities, but most importantly others, their lecturers and their fellow students. This mode of delivery should incorporate some collaborative spaces and practices such as group or paired work. Communication should move beyond the basic use of email and announcements and include Blackboard Collaborate as an option, with opportunities for students to interact directly with the lecturer and other students synchronously. This does not need to be weekly, but should be included at least a few times each semester. And of course, this should also be reflected in the unit's assessment practices. Finally, the transformational mode. This mode is really focused on thinking about your unit delivery differently. Here, an academic would think about alternative ways of designing the unit, which may well be co-designed by the lecturer acting as a facilitator and their students. Moodle here becomes the primary footprint for the delivery of the unit, which should look at least like an interactive mode unit as a minimum. But the lecturer and the students are not confined to this space, but use this as a starting place, a beginning, and the rest of the world is their oyster. Here we think about co-creating content in so many different spaces: blogs, wikis, e-portfolio, through Skype, BBC, social media. There are no limits. It has to be said that not every academic is comfortable with this form of delivery, and not every student is comfortable learning in this way. But within the space of this model, there is room for all. And it should be emphasized that during a degree course, it would be hoped that students will experience the full range of pedagogical deliveries. I have included at the end here a document that will help the academic consider how to develop their unit for online delivery. the questions based on the core elements in the model that should be considered. In a sense, there is nothing that is startlingly new in the model. What the model does is to draw on the existing literature to help an academic beginning in online teaching think about what their unit should look like, and a group of academics developing an online degree consider the full student experience across that degree to develop a quality and teaching learning experience for all students. We have always been accountable for our teaching and for the quality of the learning experiences that we give our students. Quality online course development allows us to meet that accountability head on and trump it. But what I especially like about developing quality online courses is that it moves the responsibility for the learning back onto the student, which is where it really belongs. The better the quality online experience for the student, the more they are able and must take responsibility for what they do in the space. And this model helps us build that quality unit, course, degree. The adoption of the model, in a sense, empowers us all.